So, when do you call it quits? When do you give up on a title or a run, or you've been collecting for 30 years and it's time to call it a day? Let's talk about that. Hey, this is Perch. I need a different ending to the cold open. Besides, let's talk about that. I just it sounds gross. That's not who I am. You're watching the evolution. A year from now, when I'm on video number 400, I'll have finally gotten to competent. That's what I'm shooting for. That's the direction we're headed. So when do you call it a day? So the interesting thing about comics, and I think this is something that the current publishing teams at really all the companies, not just the big two, but across the board, um, there's been a subtle shift. So back in the 80s, 90s, kind of early aughts, there was this idea, and you'd hear it a lot at cons, and you'd hear it a lot at particularly the reseller summits and those kinds of things, where they'd say, the collectors are our lifeblood. They're the people who, we managed to convince them, hey, get on this train with us. And I like that metaphor. I like the idea that a book, a collector run is like a train. You're going to purchase a ticket, you're going to get on the train, you're going to sit down, you're going to be there for a long time, you're going to ride this to some kind of destination point, and hopefully you like the ride and you just keep riding. The never-ending train. No, but I like that idea that collecting is not a simple thing. You got to convince somebody, hey, this is a ride you want to ride. This is a journey you want to be on. And when you get on this train, this ride, you're going to want to be on it for a long time. You're going to want to stick with us, to the end, and the end may come decades from now. And I think there was a lot of respect for those customers once upon a time. And then it seemed like, I think there was just a bunch of information that kind of warped people's perspectives, and some of it was the rise of graphic novel sales, and the idea that, like, hey, people are waiting for the trades, so we'll write to the trade. I think this is something that really got popularized in both companies, but Marvel started, like, everything was a 6 issue decompressed arc. We're writing for the trade, and there's this idea that, hey, monthly floppies will, in 10 years. In fact, I remember being at a con, and one of the writers was saying that, monthlies will go away by 2020. There will not be floppies anymore, and it will all be just trade paperbacks. And I remember thinking at the time, that's a goofy statement, because trade paperbacks are collections of floppies. So there won't be trade paperbacks. It'll just be like really big floppies, is what you're saying. But I also thought, this doesn't really line up. If you look at kind of what's going on with manga and what goes on in, the East and kind of other regions, there's still a very viable market for, monthly comics. And if there is bigger, quote unquote trades, there's a lot that's happening to keep readers invested month to month. Even if the primary story takes 6 months to come out, there's a lot of little micro stories and marketing. There's a lot of ways that the fans are kept. And in the West, with this market, it's like we want that end result of just having trades, but we don't want to do the work to actually keep people invested from, every 4 to 6 months. And you see these little experiments, these kind of failed experiments, frankly, with where, well, we're going to be on digital and we're going to release all 6 issues at once on digital, and be like Netflix. And except it's not like Netflix. It's a different model. And one thing that I think Netflix is already suffering with, and they lost a ton of money, and you have all these streaming services coming out, so competition is going to be fierce. There is a missing piece that nobody's really cracked, and that's, if you're going to, do, a series every year, then you're going to have a couple mega series that people will be, comfortable of waiting for, or the pop culture will kind of fill in the blanks, like Stranger Things or Game of Thrones or stuff like that. But Stranger Things, Game of Thrones, The Handmaid's Tale, different genres there, but just, kind of these ones that are very successful are 1 out of 100, and there's 99 that are not successful, that come out and they just kind of go nowhere, or they don't get the attention, or they're kind of just filler. And so I think if you're not going to have filler, then you're going to need to have a way to connect or keep audiences warm while they wait for the primary story. But anyway, but I digress. The topic is, at what point do people just jump off and stop a run? And why I think this was why I say this is interesting is because a lot of people that the move to trade, the bookmarking of kind of when an arc ends and another one begins is a good jumping off point. But collectors are what has propped up and caused comic stores to survive, and to a greater extent, was caused comics to survive. Because I mean, the reality is, this business, this industry, has been built and made by people who have, readers, fans, customers, who have gotten invested in a story and gone back month after month, week after week. Not, much like a TV show, much like a serialized, Gotham or Friends or Seinfeld or whatever era you're from. These are people who tune in every week to see how the story is going to develop. And same thing with comics. You're going to tune in every month to see how the story is going to develop, and you're hooked. You're a collector. And slowly but surely, the publishers have started to dismantle that to some extent, where they're saying, the collector's not that important. We're looking for people. We're looking for new markets. We're looking to chase, young adults, primarily girls, which is fine. Again, you should chase all of these markets, but you shouldn't murder markets you had successful while you're chasing the new market. That's just stupid. But there was this subtle message, or maybe not so subtle message, given to customers that the collector market was being deprioritized, that it wasn't as important, that we're okay with people jumping off. I think the thing that strikes me is that I'm really haunted. That there's things that bug me, like I'm sure bug you, and it takes me a while before I figure out the full extent of why they bug me. And one of those is um, people. It's when these titles end after, say, 6 issues or 8 issues, or these relatively short runs, and there's this kind of I don't know, eulogy given at the end by the writer, who's like, "Oh well, this is the end of the adventures for now," and it's very the eulogy feels very flippant. It feels very like, um, oh well, that's the end of our run. Off to new comics. Hey, good news! Even though I've caused a cancellation of multiple comics, I'm getting another one. And there you go. And I always feel like you should be more sad. You should be more ashamed that you didn't get your. I don't know about shame, but your comic didn't take. So you should be like, okay, how do I get to take next time? And you should be like, well, there we go. I had a, and especially not I really hate the ones where it says things like, this has been a dream come true for me, writing these amazing adventures. Like, you wrote 5 issues. What are you talking about? That's not a feat. But I think all of these things kind of send a little message to customers to say, hey, we don't need you. Or, hey, you can come or go, whatever. And I think if you're going to have collectors, if you're going to have people come back month after month after month and buy the comics, which the business needs, wants, should want, definitely needs, then you need to treat this whole process with a lot more reverence, a lot more respect, and a lot more concern. You need to have editorial meetings where people are sitting around going, hey, we need customers. We need people coming back month after month, and they're not coming back month after month. What's going on? What do we do? How do we keep them? What's the attach rate? What's the churn month to month? Why is this happening? These are the kinds of discussions that need to occur. Probably the most important discussions that need to occur, because on the fan side, what causes you to jump off if you've been a collector? And the scary part is when you're in the store and you get people coming in and going, well, go ahead and remove this from my box. And you've known this person for, say, 5, 6, 10 years, and they've bought Avengers. They've had it on their pull list for a decade, and they're like, take it off. And it's like, crap. If you're selling comics, this is a horror moment. This is like somebody saying, much lesser extent. I'm being overly dramatic, but it's like, hey, I've got my kid here. This is my child. My child hit 14, and you know what? Screw it. We're done. We're sending them off into the world. They're going off to find their fortune. They've they've hit puberty. It's time to go find a Pokemon, or they're heading off to Professor Oak's place, and they're goodbye. You're out of the house. But that's what it feels like with comics. I always wonder and I ask, I'm like, so what pushed you to this limit? What was it that caused you to abandon a comic that you've been collecting for hundreds of issues? And it's never I never get a great answer that I could point to, and it's a combination of things. Like, well, I just got tired. The story wasn't going anywhere. There's like, I was looking at it, and I was buying 20 comics, and the comics are $4.99 a month, and it's just time for me to cut back. Or it's like, yeah, my wife is like, screw you, stop bringing these comics home. Or occasionally get the, I hate this. I hate this writer. I hate this run. I hate this. I hate what they're doing with the character. I just don't want it in my life anymore. Or I was asking myself, the common answer I get, and this is there's some wisdom or wisdom, insight in what I'm about to say. It's, well, I found that I was getting comics, and I would bag and board them in the shop. So I'm going home and I'm taking the comic out of the bag and I'm reading it. And then I noticed that, the Flash, I had 6 issues that had stacked up that I had never bothered to take out of the bag. And then I thought to myself, I don't want to read this. And so I just didn't. And then I thought, well, if I'm not even going to read it, why am I even buying it? And then I was like, well, I should probably, keep collecting it for a while. He's like, and then I'd go on for about another 6 months, and eventually it's like, you know what? I don't even. Why am I even bothering? Why? I'm good. I've got a good run. I'm cashing my chips out. I'm calling it a day. And I think that's what the journey a lot of customers do for themselves. I'm not reading this comic anymore. I'm just kind of going through the motions because I want to have a complete run. And then it's like one day I'm like, you know what? Why? Do I plan on selling these comics? Does it matter anymore? I've got the first 200 issues of Flash. I've got Flash from 1980 to. I've never had anybody say this about the Flash, by the way, for those of you who are wondering, but it's an example. The scary part, X-Men is the one that's had such chaos over the years of, you have these people who have collected thousands of issues of X-Men, the Claremont run, the Claremont Divergence run, where we've got Excalibur and somebody's writing X-Force, and we've got we got the Liefeld is there, and then Liefeld is gone. We've got New Mutants. We've got X Factor, and we got Havoc's team, and then we got Havoc in an alternate dimension, and then we've got all these X books. And then somebody comes in and they're like, I probably own 10,000 X titles, and I'm done. You know what? They're moving on to Sunken Asteroid M off the coast of San Francisco, and screw it. No more. I'm out. And to me, that was always like, you just reached into your mouth and you yanked out a tooth and you just ripped it out of your mouth. Because it's like, this is somebody who's walking away from thousands of issues and legacy and stories and subplots and plots of subplots and plots. And that's just an insane thing to walk away from. And so I'm always curious, what is the tipping point for these people? And I think a lot of reasons, a lot of things are the tipping point. But it is definitely true that a part of that tipping point is just a simple fact of, you know what? I don't think the person making the comic, the company or the person making the comic, cares if I buy this comic. I don't feel like they care about, and not even my business, not even my money, my eyeballs, my time. I don't feel like they care about my time. And so I just want to do different things with my time. It's not all about cash. You know what? Time is short, and I'm getting this, nonsensical BS storyline, and I'm not coming back. And with X-Men, I think the No More Mutants storyline killed off a few. There are people who jumped off then. The move to Asteroid M killed off. That was the biggest kind of chunk I'd seen for a while. And then the Kieran Gillen run came in, and then the Bendis run, the five younglings coming to the future killed off some. The Iceman outing, and then that killed off some. The whole Inhumans X-Men thing probably was the biggest murder of customers, I would say, who had been following it. They're like, you know what, I can't, I just can't with this anymore. And then the recent Rosenberg run was a kind of double whammy of just, and we've talked about this before, of like, hey, we're relaunching the X-Men, we're serious about it this time, we're going to make it work, this is for realsies. And Brisson had gotten kind of a good reputation, he's involved, okay. I remember when that relaunch was coming, and I posted something like, you know what, there's some worrying signs here, because they're saying we really get the X-Men, and then they're talking about Glob as the favorite X-Men, and like they're talking about what makes X-Men work, and it's like, I don't think you know what makes X-Men work, Kelly Thompson. I don't think you know what you're talking about, but yeah, okay. And then it's then they got to, they're like, oh, but hang with us. Here comes Age of X-Men. It's going to be a successor to Age of Apocalypse, and it was so not. And that was going on, and then some people were like, well, we're going to hang with the main book because Rosenberg's got Cyclops and Wolverine working together. We really wanted to see that. And then that turned into X-Men snuff film, and just so many people just bailed. And when they revealed, like, hey, we're relaunching everything with Hickman, there was a lot of excitement around Hickman, but there was a lot of customers just really like torn up with angst of like, I am so pissed, I am done, screw you. But man, I like Hickman, and I've been wanting to come to X-Men, and this Hickman on X-Men seems great. I don't know what to do here because I'm so mad and so optimistic at the same time. What do I do? So anyway, but every title has these moments. So what about you? So what are the times? Have you been a collector, and do you think collectors are important? First off, I mean, yes, but then actually you answer that, not me. It's your question for you. But then more importantly, like if you've been a collector and you decided I'm out, what triggered the I'm out? What triggered you to abandon the collection, to call it a day and be done? Let me know in the comments. Would love to hear from you. Otherwise, like, subscribe, tell a friend. Something about notifications. Follow me on Twitter at Comic Perch. Let me know what you're thinking, and thank you for listening.